Well, still on South Africa's energy problems, some experts are warning that Russia's invasion of Ukraine and its impact on the global economy will have a knock-on effect on Eskom. For more on the risks that the utility is facing currently, we're joined by energy expert Clyde Mallinson. Clyde, good evening, and thank you so much for your time. So just the other day, we heard Eskom talking about how they may need to find alternative suppliers of diesel because some of the service providers also source their energy from either Ukraine or Russia. And one automatically thinks, well, what does this mean for us?
Well, Kathy, thanks. Evening. Yes, let's just put it very simply. Eskom would rather not use any diesel if it had the choice, because diesel is an expensive option. So yes, it does create a problem. And strangely enough, it's a financial problem as well as a logistics problem. So even if we had diesel for no cost and as much as we could get, if we had the world of diesel, we can only actually supply it to the open cycle gas turbines at a particular rate. So there's a bottleneck in the logistics because those turbines are meant to be emergency supply. And so they're meant to only run for a few hours a day at most. And so the whole storage tanks and the whole unloading and the decanting of diesel to them is such that we actually can't run them all the time anyway. So I don't see it as being a major problem. That we can't get hold of diesel, because even if we had diesel, we can't actually get it to the diesel OCGTs fast enough to run them all the time. They just simply can't do that logistically.
Clyde, what are the biggest risks that Eskom is facing right now that we as the public need to be aware of?
They've got a multitude of risks. There's clearly a financial risk, and you can argue that, well, we can make a plan and make sure that they've got enough money to either buy diesel as much as they can use. The big risk is one that I've been speaking about for probably the last 5 years, and that is the risk of believing that you can turn around the performance of an old fleet by catching up maintenance. And I've always warned that it's very difficult to catch up maintenance. If you don't go for your regular checkups with your doctor, and then you suddenly rush and think, well, I'll now go to the doctor 5 days in a row to catch up. Well, it doesn't work like that. And so I've been a bit of a skeptic of so-called catch-up maintenance. I've run a plant or two in my day, and there is no such thing as catch-up maintenance. If you miss key milestones in your maintenance, it's almost impossible to catch up. I've been there for a long time now. We need to build new to create the space to allow us to retire the old with dignity. And at the moment, the old are dying, and it's anything but dignified, as we all can see. We're in the dark, basically, and the fleet is behaving as much as I predicted it would. If it's not this one tripping, it's the next one. And that's what happens with old, unreliable, unpredictable equipment.
Clyde, part of the concern, hearing you say that, of course, is that so much of the turnaround at Eskom has been hinged on maintenance. In fact, when we look at some of the reporting that they did for the previous financial year, they centered a huge part of why we had experienced, so many power cuts, and even why the energy availability factor had been reduced so significantly, to the fact that they weren't able to conduct maintenance according to pre-planned schedules.
Yeah, look, I think one of the biggest things, and it's not a secret, everyone knows, one of the big disappointments is that the two new coal-fired power stations, which together make up about a quarter of the fleet if they were running at full steam, have just not been performing. So it was like, pretend you were a taxi fleet owner with 100 taxis, and you said, right, 10 of them are old, we've got to retire them, but we're getting 20 new ones, and then we can retire some of the others as well. And you get those 20 new ones, and they don't work. This one, I don't know, the clutch plate isn't working, and the next one. So we've had problems with those new ones, and I think they had planned and basically based a lot of their planning on the fact that the new ones would behave slightly better than they have behaved. Everyone knows when you put in new plant, there's a startup teething period. But it's been like a toddler who's been teething for 5 years instead of 6 months, if you know what I mean.
So what's the solution then to the present day challenge? Because again, if I were to go back to what you said a little earlier, the idea of having to build plants from scratch, that energy is only going to be available even if schedules are on time years later. So what's the solution now, Clyde?
Look, the only thing we can build now that can come online quickly is wind and solar and storage. And when I say it can come online quickly, we can put utility-scale solar online in about 12 months if we started tomorrow. We can put utility wind online in about 18 months. And we can put utility storage online probably in about 6 months. The problem with storage, as you would know, is you can't store anything unless you've got surplus. And at the moment, we've actually got surplus storage, and we're having to fill our storage by having load shedding at night. So when you hear Eskom say we're replenishing our emergency reserves, what they're really saying is they're giving themselves a breather by having load shedding at night to replenish the diesel stocks, because remember I told you there's a logistic problem there. And at the same time, they're using that load shedding space to pump water up into the pumped storage dams. So you and I know that you can't save unless you've got surplus salary, and Eskom can't store. So we do need more storage, but there's no point in building more storage unless we have more supply. And the quickest way of getting more supply onto the grid is wind and solar, and the very quickest way is a massive ramp up of commercial, industrial and residential rooftop solar. It's happening anyway, but it can be massively accelerated. But there's no one thing that needs to happen. We need to do that in conjunction with utility scale. The one thing that won't be able to be done is we certainly can't build a new coal plant or a nuclear plant, even if they cost nothing, because they're going to take 8 to 10 to 12 years to come online. And at least the wind and solar can come online inside of 12 months, certainly the solar. And the rooftop solar can actually be done, you can do it in parallel. So you don't have to do one rooftop, then the next. You do them in parallel. We could probably fit one stage of load shedding, if I put it in those terms, on rooftops in South Africa each year. So within a year, we could remove one stage of load shedding.
Of course, the challenge there are often the costs associated.
Well, the costs of unserved electricity at the moment, I don't even want to talk about. But from a business perspective, it makes sense now. These people who put solar on roofs of businesses, and those businesses pay for that solar, so they don't install it themselves, and they actually pay less for their energy coming from that rooftop than they're currently paying the municipality. So that crossover has happened really. It's actually cheaper to buy electricity from your rooftop, as it were. Certainly if it's a spa shop or a supermarket or something, at that scale, you can get electricity at around about R1, maybe R1.10 a kilowatt hour. And I know that you pay more than that at municipal rates. The other unfortunate thing, I say unfortunate, is you'll be aware that we're refurbishing Coburg at the moment in order to try and extend its life. And let's just put it this way, it couldn't have been a worse time to pick to have Coburg not firing on both cylinders. Because literally with half of Coburg shut down at the moment, half of Coburg represents one stage of load shedding.
Sure.
So if we're switching to load shedding stage 3 tomorrow, it could have been stage 2, if you see what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
And that's just, the timing couldn't have been worse. And of course, Eskom didn't say, oh, we're going to shut down Coburg, and when I say they didn't say that, they thought that the coal fleet would behave itself. And as I said, it's not my words, it's Eskom's words. It's unpredictable, it's old, and it's unreliable. And if you've got an old, unpredictable, unreliable car You don't pop in it and think, I'm going to drive to Cape Town and not expect to have problems along the way.
Clyde, thank you so much for your insights tonight. He's an energy expert there with at least his views on the state of Eskom.